Fear is an invitation to growth. There's this thing about fear, isn't there? It's one of those emotions that creeps in, catches us off guard, and freezes us in our tracks. But here's the kicker. It's not always the enemy we think it is. Sometimes, fear is a wake-up call, a chance for us to do something we never thought possible. I remember the first time I realized that fear wasn't there to stop me, but rather to push me forward. It was this gnawing sense of dread in my gut, like I had to do something, but the fear kept telling me to run. But instead of bolting, I stayed. See, fear is often seen as this wall, this obstacle standing between us and the life we want. And sure, it can be a wall. But I'm telling you, sometimes fear is just a door in disguise, a door that leads you straight into the very heart of growth. Like an invitation that says, hey, you might want to step through this. It's this odd little paradox. Fear holds us back, and yet, in some strange way, it's the thing that propels us forward. Take the first time you decided to do something big, something outside your comfort zone. What was it? Maybe you started a new job, confronted a relationship issue, or went on that solo trip. In each of those moments, fear was present, right? It wasn't just a shadow in the background. It was right there, buzzing in your ear. It was that voice saying, are you sure? Is this a good idea? But here's the thing. You did it anyway. And when you did, you started to notice something amazing. It was the fear that gave you the push you needed. Think about it. Without fear, how would we know what we're really capable of? How would we test our limits or discover strengths we didn't even know we had? You see, fear is an invitation. It's a sign that you're on the edge of something important, something transformative. And if you're brave enough to face it, you'll find that fear doesn't have to be this big, terrifying monster. It can be a gentle nudge, leading you to places you never thought you'd go. But let's be real here. It's easy to say fear is an invitation when you're on the other side of a challenge, when you've already made it through. It's a whole different ballgame when you're standing there, feeling like you're about to jump off a cliff. There's that cold sweat, that racing heart, and the overwhelming urge to turn around and run. But here's the twist. If you can learn to sit with that fear, if you can stay with it for just a little while longer, that's where the magic happens. That's where the real growth begins. There's a science behind this, you know. When we experience fear, our body goes into this fight or flight mode, releasing adrenaline and preparing us for action. That surge of energy can make us feel like we're about to crash and burn, but it's actually a natural response that primes us for change. In a way, fear becomes a physical manifestation of our potential, pushing us to act, to move, and to grow. And then there's the psychological side of things. Fear is often tied to our ego, our self-image. It tells us that we're not ready, not good enough, not capable. But here's the trick. Fear is often the result of the stories we tell ourselves. When we tell ourselves that we can't do something, fear grows. But when we flip the script and say, yeah, I'm scared, but I'm going to try anyway, fear begins to lose its grip. It no longer has the same power over us. So that's the first thing we need to understand about fear. It's not the enemy, it's a signpost. It's there to show us that we're on the verge of something important. And that's the beautiful thing about it. It's not a brick wall, but a stepping stone, an invitation to step into something new. The trick is recognizing it for what it is, a chance to grow. So, here's something that's been bugging me for a while. Have you ever noticed how fear often feels bigger than it really is? Like, it towers over us, but when we really look at it, it's more of a shadow than a solid thing. We've all had moments where we're convinced the fear is too much, too overwhelming, and there's no way we can push through. But guess what? Once you actually step into the fire, you realize it's not nearly as hot as it seemed from the outside. Let's talk about that for a second. Fear has this funny way of magnifying things in our minds. It takes the smallest possible scenario and blows it up into a massive, insurmountable obstacle. You've probably had it happen to you. You're about to go on stage for a presentation, and suddenly, in your head, it's not just about speaking in front of a few people. It's the end of the world. You imagine tripping, forgetting your lines, and everyone judging you. All of this plays out in your mind before you even open your mouth. But then, when it's over, you look back and think, wait, that wasn't so bad. It's like fear puts a filter over reality, turning something relatively minor into a full-blown crisis. Let's reframe fear. It's not that fear is lying, it's just being selective. It highlights the risks, the worst-case scenarios, but it forgets to mention what could go right. Every time you step out of your comfort zone, you're not just facing danger. You're stepping into potential. That's where growth lives. That's where your life expands. Take a minute and think about something in your life that you feared, something you've been putting off for weeks, months, or maybe even years. Is it really as scary as you've been making it out to be? Is the worst-case scenario really as awful as you imagine? It's often the fear of the unknown that makes it feel so heavy. We don't know how things will turn out, and that uncertainty can feel like a weight on our shoulders. But the reality is, not knowing isn't as dangerous as we think. In fact, it's the unpredictability of life that makes it exciting. And here's the funny thing about human nature. We're actually pretty good at handling uncertainty. Research shows that our brains are designed to cope with change, even though it might feel like we're losing control. It's our evolutionary survival instinct kicking in. Fear, in a strange way, is a tool, just like a hammer is a tool. It's there to help us adapt, to keep us alert, and to give us the push we need when things are uncertain. It's not there to destroy us, but to help us rebuild stronger. But let's take it even further. Think about fear as a messenger. It's trying to tell you something. It's not just some random emotional response. It's an indicator of where you need to grow. Often, the things we fear the most are the areas where we have the most potential for growth. Fear shines a spotlight on those places in our lives that are begging for attention, urging us to dig deeper, to stretch beyond our limitations. It's like the universe saying, hey, there's something here for you, if you're brave enough to reach for it. Now, I know some of you are probably sitting there thinking, but fear is terrifying. It paralyzes me. And I get it. I've been there. But what if I told you that the only reason fear feels so paralyzing is because we don't acknowledge it as an ally? What if, instead of running from it, we welcomed it as part of our growth process? When we shift our perspective on fear, it no longer controls us. It becomes a tool that helps us push past the barriers we've built around ourselves. One of the most interesting things I've learned over the years is that the more we run from fear, the more it grows. The more we try to suppress it, the bigger it gets. Fear feeds on avoidance. It thrives when we ignore it, when we bury it under a pile of distractions. But if we confront it head-on, if we look it in the eye and say, okay, I see you, but I'm not afraid, we take away its power. It's like deflating a balloon. The moment you stop letting fear control the narrative, you regain control over your own life. That's the paradox, right? Fear can either limit you or launch you into your next level of growth. It's your choice. It's always your choice. Fear doesn't have to be this invisible force that dictates your life. Instead, it can be your partner, a companion on the journey of becoming the best version of yourself. It's there to guide you, not to drag you down. The more you lean into it, the more you'll see that it's not as terrifying as you once thought. It's just a sign that you're on the verge of something big. So, what do you do with this newfound understanding of fear? Well, for starters, you start treating it like an old friend. Acknowledge it, welcome it, and then move forward. You'll find that the fear doesn't disappear, but it doesn't control you anymore either. It becomes just another part of the process of growing, evolving, and ultimately thriving. Let's be real here. Most of us would rather avoid the thing that scares us than face it head on. It's just easier that way, right? After all, it's the path of least resistance. But here's the thing. If you really want to grow, if you truly want to break through, you've got to go toward the very thing you're afraid of. It's counterintuitive, I know. But the truth is, the only way to truly deal with fear is to confront it directly. I remember when I was about to give my first big presentation. This was before I'd fully understood the whole fear is an invitation thing. I had every excuse ready to go. I'm not prepared enough. What if I mess up? What if they don't like what I have to say? The fear of failing, of being judged, was overwhelming. My heart was racing, my palms were sweaty, and I couldn't even remember my own name, let alone the words I was supposed to say. But here's the thing I didn't realize. The fear wasn't the real problem. The real problem was the way I was avoiding it. So, I did the thing you're probably thinking I should have done from the beginning. I took a deep breath, acknowledged that I was scared out of my mind, and stepped up to the challenge. And you know what happened? It wasn't perfect, not by a long shot. I stumbled over a word or two, fumbled my notes, and I'm pretty sure I went 3 shades of red in front of the crowd. But here's the kicker, I did it. And the fear, which had seemed so massive in my head, didn't feel nearly as big once I was in the thick of it. That's the thing about fear. When you stand still, when you let it control your decisions, it grows and grows, and suddenly it becomes this towering mountain you can't possibly climb. But the moment you take that first step, when you face it head-on, something changes. Fear loses its grip. It's like finding out that the thing you've been running from isn't as powerful as you thought. Now, I'm not saying that confronting fear is always easy. Far from it. There's always that initial discomfort, the rush of anxiety, the shaky legs, the voice in your head telling you to turn back. But you've got to push through it. And here's why. Once you break through that initial wall of fear, you'll find that the thing you were afraid of becomes much smaller. It's the same principle as jumping into cold water. It's horrible at first, but once you're in, you realize it's not so bad. In fact, it can even feel refreshing. There's a psychological term for this: exposure therapy. It's a technique used to help people confront and overcome phobias by gradually exposing them to the thing they fear in a controlled way. The idea is that the more you face the fear, the less it controls you. The same thing applies to personal growth. The more you confront the fears that hold you back, the less power they have over you. But here's where it gets interesting. When we actively choose to face our fears, something inside us shifts. We begin to realize that fear is not something that happens to us. It's something that happens for us. It's a signal, a message that tells us, hey, this is where growth lies. And the more we embrace that, the more we begin to see fear as a tool, not an obstacle. Now, let's talk about something a little deeper here: the nature of growth itself. Growth isn't a smooth, linear path. It's messy. It's full of setbacks, challenges, and plenty of uncomfortable moments. The truth is, growth often happens in those moments of discomfort. It happens when you're in the middle of fear, unsure whether you'll make it out the other side. But that's where the magic is. If you're willing to sit with the discomfort, if you're willing to feel the fear and still move forward, you'll find that you're stronger than you ever thought possible. Take a moment and think about the last time you faced something truly difficult. Maybe it was a tough conversation, a new challenge at work, or even a personal struggle. When you think back on it, what do you remember? Probably not the fear. Instead, you remember how you handled it, how you kept going even when it was hard. And in doing so, you grew. Fear was the catalyst. It wasn't the enemy, it was the invitation. It's like when you see someone lifting weights at the gym. They're straining, sweating, struggling with the weight. It looks painful. But here's the thing: they're not just suffering. They're building strength. They're growing. That's exactly how it is with fear. Every time you confront it, you're building your emotional muscle. You're becoming more resilient, more capable, and more ready to take on whatever comes next. And here's the paradox again. Fear doesn't just prepare us for one moment of growth, it prepares us for many. The more we face it, the easier it gets to face it again. Every time we walk toward fear, we're essentially training ourselves for the next big challenge. And the next one after that. We become more adaptable, more comfortable with uncertainty, and more willing to take risks. So, the next time fear comes knocking, don't run. Don't hide. Instead, take a deep breath and step forward. Fear might be intimidating, but it's also a sign that you're on the verge of something new, something powerful. And if you can keep moving through it, if you can keep showing up, you'll find that growth isn't just possible, it's inevitable. You know, there's this odd comfort we find in familiarity, even when it doesn't serve us. We cling to routines, habits, and environments that, deep down, we know aren't helping us grow. But stepping into the unknown, that's where things get real. It's where the fear creeps in, pushing us to question everything. What's on the other side of that door? What happens if I fail? What if I don't belong? But here's the secret. The unknown is exactly where we need to be. In that uncertainty, in that space where we have no idea what's coming next, lies the greatest potential for transformation. The fear of the unknown is one of the most common fears we face. It's what keeps us from moving forward, from making that big change or taking that leap. Think about the last time you considered making a big decision. Maybe you wanted to move to a new city, switch careers, or end a relationship. What was the first thought that crossed your mind? Probably something along the lines of, what if it doesn't work out? That's the fear of the unknown at play. We have no control over what lies ahead, and that lack of control can feel paralyzing. But what if we change the way we think about it? What if, instead of seeing the unknown as a threat, we saw it as an opportunity? Think about the first time you tried something completely new. Maybe it was a hobby, a new job, or even just a different route home. At first, it felt awkward, uncomfortable, maybe even terrifying. But eventually, you got used to it. The unknown became known, and the world opened up a little bit more. That's the beauty of embracing the unknown. It's not about having all the answers. It's about being willing to explore. It's about trusting that no matter how messy it gets, you're capable of handling whatever comes your way. And that's where the growth happens. The more we embrace uncertainty, the more we learn to navigate it. The more we step into that unknown space, the more we discover our own resilience, our own strength. I remember when I first moved to a new city. I had no idea what I was doing. I didn't know anyone, didn't have a plan, and honestly, I was terrified. But looking back, that leap into the unknown was one of the best decisions I ever made. It was uncomfortable, sure. It was hard, but it forced me to grow in ways I never could have imagined. I learned to trust myself in new ways, to adapt to unfamiliar environments, and to see opportunity in places I would have previously written off as too risky. One thing I've come to understand is this. Facing the unknown isn't just about risk, it's about revelation. It shows us where we doubt ourselves, where we shrink, where fear still holds the mic. But here's the truth. You're stronger than your stories. Every unknown you step into is a chance to rise, to grow, to become. Not in spite of the uncertainty, but because of it. The fear of the unknown doesn't go away overnight, and that's okay. The key isn't to eliminate the fear, it's to move forward in spite of it. The more we step into the unknown, the more we realize that it's not so terrifying after all. The unknown is where we learn, where we fail, and where we succeed. It's where we grow. So, the next time you find yourself facing the unknown, don't turn away. Don't shy away from the uncertainty. Instead, take a deep breath and move forward. Embrace the discomfort, because that's where the magic happens. The unknown isn't something to fear, it's something to explore. It's an invitation to grow in ways you never thought possible. Remember, nothing great ever came from staying in your comfort zone. Growth only happens when you're willing to step out into the unknown, when you're willing to risk it all for the possibility of something better. And every time you do, you'll come out on the other side stronger, more confident, and ready for whatever comes next. There's this moment, right? The one where you stand at the edge of something massive, something life-altering, and you know that you can't go back. It's the tipping point, the final choice that makes you question everything. It's when fear is at its peak, when the stakes feel so high, and you're wondering if you've got what it takes. Should you back off? Should you shrink into yourself and forget this whole idea? Or should you take the leap, risking it all for the possibility of something greater? I think we've all been there. That moment when fear seems to swallow you whole, making you feel so small and insignificant. It's the kind of fear that makes your palms sweat and your heart race. But here's the thing. This is the moment that truly defines you. This is where your growth happens. You see, it's easy to make decisions when everything feels safe and predictable. But when you're standing on the edge, when you're faced with a choice that challenges your very sense of self, that's when you learn who you really are. I'll give you an example. A while back, I was presented with a huge opportunity. It was everything I had been working toward for years, something I had dreamed about, worked for, and had finally been offered. But as soon as I got the offer, fear took over. The voice in my head started screaming, "You're not ready. You're going to fail. What if you let everyone down?" That's when I realized this was the tipping point. This moment was either going to propel me forward or keep me stuck. And the decision I made in that instant was going to shape everything that came after. You see, fear has this funny way of showing up at the most critical junctures in our lives. It waits until you're about to take a massive step, a leap into the unknown, and then it tries to paralyze you. It's like fear knows that this moment, this particular decision, is the one that will push you toward your destiny. And it does everything it can to make you second-guess yourself. But what if I told you that fear is just a test? A test to see if you have the courage to move forward even when everything inside you is screaming to stop. When I made the decision to take that leap, the fear didn't vanish. It didn't magically disappear, and suddenly I was filled with confidence and certainty. No, the fear stayed with me. But what changed was how I chose to relate to it. Instead of letting it paralyze me, I let it fuel me. The fear became the spark that pushed me forward. It wasn't an obstacle. It was a reminder of the gravity of the decision. It was a sign that I was on the verge of something huge. It's often said that the bigger the fear, the bigger the reward. And while that's not always the case, there is some truth to it. When you're faced with a challenge that terrifies you, that's when you know you're stepping into a place where growth is possible. The reward might not always be immediate, and it might not always look the way you expect it to. But every time you face a tipping point and choose to move forward, you're changing the trajectory of your life. The more often you face these tipping points, the easier it gets to handle them. The first time is terrifying, because you don't know if you'll succeed or fail. But the more you face fear in these pivotal moments, the more you start to realize that it's not about success or failure. It's about the act of choosing. It's about the courage to move forward despite the fear, the willingness to trust in yourself, and the confidence that you're capable of handling whatever comes next. It's this moment of choice, this tipping point, that separates those who grow from those who stay stuck. And the more you show up for these moments, the more you'll realize that they're not as life-altering as they first seem. They're just steps in the ongoing process of growth. They're opportunities to learn more about yourself, to stretch your boundaries, and to see what you're really made of. So, how do you handle these moments? How do you know when to push through and when to turn back? The answer isn't always clear-cut. It's a feeling that comes from within. It's the difference between the fear that holds you back and the fear that propels you forward. And here's the key. Whenever you feel that fear rising, ask yourself one simple question. Am I running from something or running towards something? When you're running from fear, you're staying stuck in what's comfortable. You're avoiding growth, avoiding the possibility of failure, avoiding discomfort. But when you're running toward fear, you're embracing the unknown. You're choosing growth over comfort, transformation over stagnation. And that's the magic of the tipping point. It's where you decide which direction you're going to take. Are you going to let fear keep you safe, or are you going to use it as a springboard to launch yourself into something new? The decision you make in these tipping points is not the end of your journey. It's just the beginning. It's the first step towards something bigger, something more meaningful. And even if the road ahead is uncertain, even if you don't have all the answers, you'll find that once you've made the choice to face fear and move forward, the rest of the journey unfolds in ways you couldn't have predicted. You know what's amazing about fear? It doesn't just stop at throwing obstacles in our way. It can actually become a powerful fuel for our actions if we let it. Think about it for a second. We're all familiar with that nervous energy, the kind that bubbles up when you're about to try something new or face something challenging. That intense, jittery feeling can be a lot to handle, right? But what if we stopped seeing it as something negative and started looking at it as raw energy, energy that can push us further, faster, and harder than we ever thought possible? Because that's exactly what it is. Fear is just untapped potential, waiting for the right moment to be used. Have you ever had a moment when you were on the verge of giving up, when fear was so overwhelming that it almost made you throw in the towel? But then, something shifted. Maybe you took a deep breath, maybe you had a pep talk with yourself, or maybe you just decided to keep going anyway. And guess what? That fear, that overwhelming feeling of dread, was the very thing that propelled you to push past your limits. You found the strength to keep going because fear gave you that extra boost of adrenaline you didn't even know you had. I'll be honest, this is something I've had to learn the hard way. For a long time, I used to think that fear was a sign to stop. If I was scared, it meant I wasn't supposed to go through with it. I thought fear was a warning, a flashing red light telling me to turn around and run in the opposite direction. But eventually, I realized that fear wasn't something that should stop me. It was something that should fuel me. The more I embraced the fear, the more I realized that it was simply a signal that I was on the right track. That's when everything changed. Take, for example, the feeling you get before you do something big, something that really stretches you. Maybe you're about to ask for a promotion, or speak at a conference, or take a leap into a new career. That rush of fear, that surge of energy, it's your body's way of telling you that this moment matters. It's your inner system going into overdrive, giving you everything you need to succeed. But here's the thing. If you don't recognize that energy as fuel, it can turn against you. It can become anxiety, self-doubt, or even panic. But when you choose to see it as power, as a force that's here to push you forward, it transforms. So, how do we transform fear into fuel? It starts with recognizing it for what it is, a natural, physical reaction to the unknown. When we fear something, our body prepares us for action, our heart races, our palms sweat, our senses sharpen. That's energy, baby. The trick is learning how to channel it. Instead of focusing on how uncomfortable it feels, focus on what that energy is trying to tell you. I'm ready to take on something big. Let's take a moment here and think about how often fear has held us back. How many opportunities have we passed up because we were scared? How many dreams have we ignored simply because the fear of failure seemed too overwhelming? Fear, when left unchecked, can become a cage. But when we recognize that it's just a signpost pointing us towards something new, we can begin to break free from it. One of the best ways to turn fear into fuel is by changing the way we respond to it. When fear arises, don't try to push it away. Don't try to ignore it or pretend it's not there. Instead, lean into it. Feel the rush, the tension, the nervous energy. And then, use it. If you're nervous about a big presentation, let that nervous energy sharpen your focus. If you're scared of failing, let that fear ignite your desire to prove yourself. It's all about reframing fear as a resource, rather than an obstacle. The real magic happens when you start to see fear not as something that paralyzes you, but as something that propels you forward. When you shift your mindset like that, fear becomes less of a monster lurking in the shadows and more of a driving force that pushes you to show up, to give everything you've got, and to keep going even when the road gets tough. This transformation doesn't happen overnight. It takes practice. It takes patience. And it takes a willingness to be uncomfortable. But the more you use fear as fuel, the more natural it becomes. You'll start to notice that, instead of avoiding fear, you seek it out. Not because you want to be reckless, but because you recognize that fear is the gateway to your growth. Every time you face it head-on, you become stronger. Every time you harness it as fuel, you become more powerful. Fear has a funny way of showing us what we're really made of. It challenges us to push harder, to go further, and to dig deeper. And every time we rise to the occasion, we find out that we're capable of so much more than we ever imagined. So, the next time fear knocks on your door, don't run. Don't shrink back. Embrace it. Let it fuel your next move. Because on the other side of that fear lies the growth, the strength, and the transformation you've been waiting for. Fear is not your enemy, it's your ally. And once you realize that, you'll be unstoppable. It's funny, isn't it? How we're all constantly telling ourselves stories. Stories about who we are, what we can do, and what we're capable of achieving. Some of these stories empower us, but many of them hold us back. And the thing is, most of the time, these stories are shaped by fear. Fear whispers to us, you're not enough, you don't have what it takes, and what if you fail? And we listen. We internalize those messages and let them become our truth. But here's the kicker, those stories are not who we really are. Take a minute to think about the story you tell yourself when fear shows up. Maybe it's something like, I'm not good enough to be successful, or I always mess up. But what if I told you that those stories are just that, stories? What if they're not true at all? We tend to think of ourselves as the sum of our failures, of the things we're afraid we'll never overcome. But that's just one chapter in a much bigger book. If fear is the narrator, it's doing a pretty lousy job of telling your story. I'll admit, I've had my fair share of negative self-talk. I've told myself I wasn't ready, I wasn't qualified, I wasn't worthy. But as I've learned to face my fears head-on, I've come to realize that these stories don't define me. They're just thoughts, beliefs I've picked up along the way. And here's the thing. You can change your story. You have the power to rewrite it, to reshape it into something that empowers you rather than holds you back. The stories we tell ourselves are powerful because they shape how we approach life. They influence the choices we make, the risks we take, and the way we view ourselves. If we believe the story that fear tells us, that we're not good enough, not capable, not worthy of success, then we'll act accordingly. We'll shrink back from opportunities, we'll hesitate in moments that require us to be bold, and we'll ultimately play small. But if we rewrite the story, if we choose to believe that we are worthy, capable, and enough, then we start to show up in ways that reflect that truth. Changing the story you tell yourself isn't easy, though. It takes work. It takes a willingness to challenge the negative beliefs that fear has instilled in you. It requires you to question those thoughts and to replace them with something more empowering. But once you start, you'll be amazed at how much power you actually have over your own narrative. You'll begin to realize that you're not a victim of your circumstances. You're the author of your own story. So how do we rewrite these fear-driven stories? The first step is awareness. You have to notice when fear is influencing your thoughts. When you start to feel that familiar anxiety, that self-doubt creeping in, take a step back. Observe the story that's playing out in your head. Are you telling yourself that you can't do it? Are you focusing on all the ways things might go wrong? If so, it's time to interrupt that narrative. Once you're aware of the story, it's time to change it. Instead of telling yourself that you're not enough, try telling yourself, I am capable, and I am ready for this. Instead of focusing on all the ways you might fail, focus on the possibilities, on the growth, the lessons, and the opportunities that lie ahead. Shift your mindset from one of fear to one of possibility. And remember, this takes practice. It's not going to happen overnight, but with time and consistency, you'll start to believe the new story you're telling yourself. Let's talk about something else for a moment, the idea of self-compassion. Fear has a way of making us harsh critics of ourselves. When we fail or fall short, we're quick to beat ourselves up. But that's the last thing we need when fear is in play. Instead of shaming ourselves, We need to show ourselves kindness and compassion. We need to understand that failure is a part of growth, and that mistakes are just stepping stones on the path to success. When we embrace our imperfections and allow ourselves to be human, we free ourselves from the self-imposed limitations that fear has put in place. And here's the thing. Once we start rewriting the story we tell ourselves, we begin to see the world differently. We start to realize that we are capable of far more than we ever gave ourselves credit for. We start to see challenges as opportunities rather than threats, and we approach fear with curiosity instead of dread. The narrative shifts from one of limitation to one of possibility. So, take a moment and think about the stories you've been telling yourself. Are they the stories of fear, stories that hold you back, that make you doubt yourself, that keep you playing small? Or are they the stories of growth, stories that empower you, that remind you of your strength and potential? The beautiful thing is, you get to choose. You get to decide what story you want to live by. And the next time fear shows up, as it inevitably will, remember this. It's not the end of the story. It's just the beginning. Fear might show up to challenge you, but it doesn't have to control you. You have the power to rewrite your story. You have the power to make fear work for you instead of against you. And that, my friend, is where the real magic happens. Here's something I've come to realize. Growth doesn't happen on a timeline we can predict. It's not something we can rush, control, or force. The path of growth is messy, slow, and unpredictable. It's a process, not a destination. And yet, it's one of the most beautiful, life-altering experiences we can go through. And for those of us who fear uncertainty, the discomfort of not knowing what's next can be downright maddening. We like to have control. We like to know where we're headed, when we're going to get there, and what the end result is going to be. But here's the kicker. The journey doesn't work that way. Think about the last time you faced something truly difficult. It wasn't easy, right? There were bumps along the way, moments where you thought you weren't going to make it, moments where you questioned whether it was all worth it. But as time went on, you started to realize something. You weren't just surviving the challenge. You were learning from it. You were growing. The tricky part is, growth rarely looks like what we expect. It's not this straight line of progress with a clear start, middle, and end. It's more like a winding road, with twists and turns and some detours that leave you scratching your head. And along the way, there are moments when you feel like you're getting nowhere. You get stuck, you get frustrated, and you think you're just not moving forward. But I promise you, even in those moments, growth is happening. It's happening in the discomfort, in the uncertainty, in the waiting. There's a reason for this. The brain, in its infinite wisdom, knows that discomfort and uncertainty are crucial for growth. It's the very reason why we feel anxiety, fear, and nervousness when we're faced with new challenges. These feelings push us to adapt, to learn, to stretch beyond what we already know. The discomfort isn't a sign that you're failing, it's a sign that you're evolving. But the problem comes when we try to rush that process. When we expect instant results, when we want everything to happen now, we can't fully embrace the journey. We can't appreciate the subtle shifts that are happening inside of us. And that's where patience comes in. Trusting the process means acknowledging that growth takes time and that every step, no matter how small, is leading us to where we need to go. Let's take a look at something most of us don't like to talk about: failure. It's a word that sends shivers down our spine, isn't it? We fear failure because we equate it with defeat. We think that if we fail, it means we're not good enough, that we'll never get it right. But what if failure wasn't the end of the road? What if failure was simply a step in the process of growth? What if every failure, every setback, was just a sign that we were getting closer to where we wanted to be? The truth is, we learn far more from our failures than we do from our successes. It's through failure that we discover our strengths and weaknesses, our resilience, and our determination. Each failure is a lesson in disguise, a stepping stone that brings us closer to the person we're meant to become. But I'll be honest with you, it's hard to embrace failure when fear is in the driver's seat. Fear wants to protect us from the pain of failure, so it convinces us to play it safe, to stay within our comfort zone. But playing it safe doesn't lead to growth. It just leads to stagnation. And growth doesn't happen when you're standing still. It happens when you take risks, when you try something new, when you embrace the discomfort of not knowing whether you'll succeed or fail. I get it. The waiting is hard. The uncertainty is frustrating. But there's something incredibly powerful about trusting the process, about embracing the unknown, and about knowing that every step you take, no matter how small, is a part of your evolution. The journey isn't always easy, but it's always worth it. Growth happens in those quiet moments when you don't feel like you're doing anything at all. It happens when you're sitting with the discomfort, when you're pushing through the fear, when you're trusting that something is shifting inside of you, even if you can't see it yet. You know what's kind of amazing? When you stop obsessing over the end goal and actually let yourself be in the process, things start to feel different. You enjoy learning. You celebrate small wins. You grow in ways you didn't even expect. And you realize it was never just about getting there. It was about who you became on the way. So, my challenge to you is this: trust the process. When fear arises, when doubt creeps in, when you're stuck in the waiting game, remember this: growth doesn't happen overnight, and that's okay. The discomfort, the uncertainty, the fear, it's all part of the journey. And if you keep showing up, if you keep leaning into the fear and trusting the process, you'll find that growth comes when you least expect it. Patience is the key. Growth takes time. Trust the process, even when it feels like nothing is happening. It is happening. You're evolving, step by step, day by day, and the more you trust that, the more you'll realize that the journey was worth it all along. There's a phrase that gets thrown around a lot: it's all in your head. And while it sounds a bit cliché, it's surprisingly true when it comes to fear. Fear often builds walls in our minds, walls that make us believe we can't do something or that we're not good enough. We get so wrapped up in our own thoughts, in the what-ifs, that we convince ourselves we're limited by these walls. But what if I told you that most of those walls don't even exist? They're just illusions built by our fears, our doubts, and our past experiences. The reality is, we're the ones who built those walls, and we're the ones who have the power to tear them down. When we think about the walls fear constructs in our minds, it's often about our perceived limitations. I'm not smart enough. I'm not strong enough. I'll never make it. These are all narratives we create when we're faced with uncertainty. But the funny thing is, these limitations are often based on nothing more than fear of the unknown. We haven't even tried yet, and already, we've decided that we're not capable. I've done this myself. I've looked at opportunities that seemed out of reach, and before I even took a step toward them, I'd already decided that I wasn't good enough. I had built a wall in my mind, made of doubt and fear, and I convinced myself that there was no way I could break through. But here's the thing. Every time I took a step toward breaking those walls down, I realized something profound: the walls were never as strong as I thought. They were made of my own fears, and all I needed to do was push through them. The human mind is a powerful thing. It can create limits that feel so real, but those limits are often self-imposed. We're constantly telling ourselves stories about what we can't do, what we're too afraid to try. But the moment we push beyond those mental walls, we discover something incredible: our true potential. We realize that we've been holding ourselves back all along, and the real power to change our lives was always inside us. The most powerful way to break down these walls is to face them head on. It's one thing to acknowledge the wall, but it's a whole other thing to push through it. And that's where the growth happens, when we choose to move forward, despite the fear. The more we do this, the easier it becomes to recognize that the walls are just illusions. The fear, the doubt, the uncertainty, they're all temporary. And once you face them and push through them, you'll realize that you're far more capable than you ever thought. Take a moment to think about the walls in your life. What's holding you back? What fears are you letting control your decisions? Maybe it's the fear of failure, the fear of rejection, or the fear of not being good enough. But here's the thing: those walls aren't permanent. They're just barriers built by your mind. And you have the power to tear them down. It's all about perspective. We tend to see fear as a roadblock, a force that stops us from moving forward. But what if we saw it differently? What if we saw fear as an invitation to break through? What if, instead of seeing the walls as something that limits us, we saw them as something to conquer? Because here's the truth: every wall you break down makes the next one easier to overcome. The more you challenge your fear, the less power it is over you. And the more you push through your limits, the stronger you become. It gets tough when the fear feels too big to name, too heavy to move through. We freeze, thinking we need certainty before we can act. But we forget, we've walked through fear before. Maybe not gracefully, maybe not confidently, but we made it. And we will again. Sometimes, trusting ourselves is the only compass we need. The beauty of breaking through fear is that it's never a one-time thing. The walls might pop up again, but each time, you'll be more equipped to handle them. Each time you face fear and push through, you'll build more resilience. You'll learn more about yourself, and you'll realize just how much you're capable of. It's a cycle of growth, a never-ending process of breaking through barriers and evolving into a stronger, more confident version of yourself. So, what's holding you back right now? What walls have you built in your mind that are keeping you stuck? Are you afraid of failing? Are you afraid of not being enough? Whatever the fear, whatever the wall, remember this: you have the power to tear it down. You've done it before, and you can do it again. Fear doesn't have to be a roadblock. It can be the very thing that pushes you forward, that drives you to break through your limits and become the person you're meant to be. The walls are only as strong as you believe them to be. And once you start breaking them down, you'll realize that the world is full of opportunities waiting for you on the other side. Here's the thing about fear: it doesn't just sit there quietly, waiting for you to come to terms with it. It likes to show up in the most unexpected places, often when you're least prepared. But the beauty of fear is that it's not just a challenge, it's also a gift. Let's take a moment to think about how fear transforms us. When we confront it, we're not just overcoming something scary, we're also becoming someone new. Fear pushes us out of our comfort zones and, in doing so, helps us evolve into stronger, more resilient versions of ourselves. And that transformation, while often uncomfortable, is what makes the journey worthwhile. You've probably experienced this before. Maybe you faced a fear that seemed overwhelming at first, something so big that you didn't even know where to start. Perhaps it was taking on a new challenge at work, starting a new project, or even something personal, like ending a toxic relationship. At first, the fear paralyzed you. You felt the anxiety, the self-doubt creeping in, and it made you question whether you were making the right decision. But then, something amazing happened. You took the first step. That first step is where the magic happens. It's the moment when you choose to push through the fear instead of letting it control you. It's the moment when you decide that the potential for growth is greater than the comfort of staying stuck. And once you take that first step, something shifts. The fear is still there, but it no longer has the same power over you. You've already broken the seal, and now you're in motion. You've moved past the mental walls, and you've opened yourself up to the possibility of something better. This is where fear's transformative power truly shines. Fear, when faced directly, doesn't just break down your walls, it rebuilds you. It forces you to tap into parts of yourself that you never knew existed. It pushes you to grow in ways that you didn't think were possible. And that's what makes it so valuable. Fear isn't just an obstacle, it's a gateway to your transformation. It's the bridge between who you are right now and who you're capable of becoming. There's an interesting thing that happens when you embrace fear. It changes the way you see yourself. The more you face your fears, the more you realize that you're capable of handling things you never thought you could. You start to see yourself as someone who can take on challenges, someone who is strong and resilient. And the more you repeat this process, facing fear, stepping forward, and growing, the more confident you become in your ability to handle whatever life throws at you. But it's not just about confidence. It's also about understanding. When you face your fears, you start to realize that fear is not something to be ashamed of. It's not a weakness. In fact, it's a strength. The ability to feel fear, to acknowledge it, and to keep moving forward despite it is one of the most powerful things you can do. It's a testament to your courage, your resilience, and your determination to grow. Take a moment to think about the growth that has already come from facing your fears. Maybe it was something small, like speaking up in a meeting or sharing your ideas with a group. Or maybe it was something bigger, like making a life-altering decision or taking a leap into the unknown. Whatever it was, it's part of your story now. It's part of the person you've become. And that growth, that transformation, is something to be proud of. But here's the thing: transformation doesn't stop once you've faced one fear. It's a continual process. Every time you take a step into the unknown, every time you face a challenge that scares you, you are transforming. You are becoming more of who you are meant to be. Growth is not a destination, it's a journey. It's a process that unfolds over time, each experience building upon the last. The beauty of this journey is that it never ends. As long as you continue to face fear and embrace the discomfort of growth, you will continue to evolve. You will continue to transform into someone stronger, more confident, and more capable of handling whatever comes your way. And the best part is, the more you grow, the more you begin to realize that fear is not something to avoid, but something to welcome. It's a sign that you're on the right track, that you're moving towards something greater, something better. So, what does this transformation look like? It looks like courage in the face of uncertainty. It looks like resilience when things get tough. It looks like strength, not because you don't feel fear, but because you've learned to move through it. It looks like a person who understands that fear is not a roadblock, but a stepping stone, a necessary part of the journey toward becoming the best version of yourself. Fear is not something that happens to you. It's something that happens for you. It's the invitation to grow, to evolve, and to become more than you were before. And every time you face it, every time you embrace it, you become a little bit stronger, a little bit braver, a little bit more of who you were always meant to be. Let's talk about something we all face at some point: the fear of failure. Oh, failure. It's the one thing we're taught to avoid, the thing we're told to steer clear of at all costs. From a young age, we're conditioned to believe that failure is something to be ashamed of, something that defines us as less than. But here's the thing: failure is not the enemy. In fact, failure is one of the most important ingredients in the recipe for growth. It's not a stop sign. It's more like a detour, a redirection towards something even better. Think about the last time you failed at something. Maybe it was a project at work, a relationship that didn't work out, or a dream that fell short. At the time, it probably felt like the world was crumbling, like you weren't good enough, like you'd never recover. But looking back now, can you see how that failure led you to where you are today? How it shaped you, changed you, and taught you something important about yourself. The truth is, failure is a teacher. It shows us what doesn't work, what needs improvement, and what we can do differently next time. Without failure, we wouldn't have the opportunity to grow, to refine ourselves, or to build resilience. I'll be the first to admit, I used to fear failure with every fiber of my being. I believed that if I failed, I wasn't good enough, that I didn't have what it took. I put so much pressure on myself to succeed, to never fall short, that failure became a terrifying monster in my mind. But over time, I realized something incredible. Failure doesn't define me. It's just a part of the process. It's an opportunity to learn, to adjust, and to come back stronger. One of the most eye-opening moments for me was when I started to look at failure through the lens of other people who had achieved great things. Think about all the successful people you admire: entrepreneurs, artists, athletes. If you dig deep enough into their stories, you'll find that failure is a common theme. In fact, many of them credit their biggest successes to their failures. They failed multiple times before they finally got it right. And here's the thing: they didn't let those failures stop them. They used them as stepping stones, as lessons that propelled them toward greater things. Take Thomas Edison, for example. He famously said, "I have not failed. I've just found 10,000 ways that won't work." That quote right there sums it up perfectly. Failure isn't a mark of incompetence. It's a necessary part of the journey to success. Every failure is a step toward the breakthrough. Every setback is an opportunity to grow, to learn, and to improve. Now, I know what you're probably thinking. That's all well and good, but failure still feels awful. And I won't sugarcoat it. It does. It's uncomfortable. It stings. But that's where the magic lies. If we can embrace failure for what it is, a temporary setback, a lesson in disguise, then we can free ourselves from the crippling fear that holds us back from trying new things. We can begin to see failure as a stepping stone rather than a stumbling block. The key is shifting our perspective. Instead of seeing failure as something to avoid at all costs, we need to start seeing it as an essential part of the growth process. We need to give ourselves permission to fail, to mess up, to make mistakes. When we do that, we open ourselves up to the possibility of success in ways we never imagined. Failure becomes less of a threat and more of an invitation to keep going, to try again, and to keep improving. Here's the kicker: the more we embrace failure, the less fear it holds over us. The first time you fail at something, it's terrifying. But the second time, you're a little less scared. The third time, it feels like just another part of the process. And eventually, failure becomes something you expect, something you welcome because you know it's a necessary part of getting where you want to go. Let's be clear. I'm not saying that failure is easy or that it doesn't hurt. It does. But what I am saying is that failure is not the end. It's not a reflection of who you are as a person. It's a part of the journey, a crucial step that leads you closer to success. And the more you embrace it, the more you'll see that failure isn't something to fear. It's something to learn from. So, the next time you fail at something, whether it's big or small, don't run from it. Don't hide from it. Lean into it. Ask yourself, what can I learn from this? How can I grow from this? Use failure as fuel to push yourself forward, to refine your skills, and to become better at what you do. Because failure isn't something that holds you back. It's the very thing that will propel you toward your greatest successes. Let's take a moment to think about something we often overlook when it comes to growth: the power of stepping into your own power. We talk a lot about facing fear, about overcoming failure, about trusting the process. But there's one more piece to this puzzle: understanding just how much power you already have. Most of us walk through life not fully acknowledging the strength within us, the courage we've developed, and the resilience that's been built over years of overcoming challenges. Instead, we let fear and doubt take center stage, overshadowing everything we've already accomplished. But what if you stopped for a second and truly saw yourself for who you are? I'll admit, I've had moments where I didn't give myself enough credit. I was so focused on what I still needed to achieve, on what I was still lacking, that I forgot to acknowledge how far I'd come. It's easy to fall into that trap, isn't it? We're conditioned to focus on our weaknesses, on the things we still need to improve. But here's the secret. True growth happens when we take a moment to appreciate our strengths, to acknowledge our power, and to see how far we've already come. We often hear the phrase, "You've got this," but how often do we truly believe it? How often do we look at ourselves in the mirror and say, "I am capable. I have everything I need within me to succeed"? It sounds simple, but for many of us, it's hard to say those words with conviction. We've been conditioned to believe that we're not enough, that we have to constantly prove ourselves. But here's the truth. You are enough, exactly as you are right now. And the more you start believing that, the more powerful you become. The truth is, stepping into your own power doesn't mean becoming perfect. It doesn't mean having it all figured out. It means accepting yourself as you are, with all your flaws, your fears, and your imperfections, and still moving forward. It means recognizing that you have the strength to face challenges, to make decisions, and to take risks, because you've already done it before. It means trusting yourself enough to step into the unknown, even when you're not sure what's on the other side. When you step into your power, you stop waiting for permission. You stop doubting yourself. You stop letting fear control you. Instead, you take charge of your own narrative. You decide what's possible for you, and you act accordingly. That's when things start to change. Because when you truly own your power, you begin to make choices that reflect the strength you already possess. It's not about waiting for the perfect moment or the perfect conditions. It's about realizing that the perfect moment is now. You don't need everything to be perfectly aligned to take action. You don't need to have all the answers, and you don't need to be fearless. What you need is the courage to step forward, the belief that you can handle whatever comes your way, and the willingness to trust yourself through the process. Think about it this way. Every time you've faced a challenge, you've learned something new about yourself. You've discovered a strength you didn't know existed, a resilience you didn't think you had. And each time you pushed through fear, you grew a little bit stronger, a little bit more capable. Every moment of uncertainty has been an opportunity to step into your own power. But here's the truth most people miss. You have to decide to own your power. No one hands it to you. You choose to believe in your worth. You choose to show up like you matter, even before it feels natural. And the more you do, the more you'll prove to yourself. You are never lacking, just waiting to say yes to your own strength. So, take a moment to acknowledge yourself. Recognize the strength you've developed over the years, the courage you've shown in the face of fear, and the resilience you've built through life's challenges. You've already proven to yourself that you have the power to face whatever comes your way. And now, it's time to own it. Step into your power, my friend. Own your strength. Stop waiting for permission or for the perfect moment. You've got everything you need inside of you already. And when you start believing that, you'll find that fear doesn't hold the same power over you. You'll become unstoppable, ready to face whatever challenges come next with confidence, courage, and strength. And that's when you'll truly start to experience the full extent of your growth. Sometimes, I think about how often we let fear shape the way we see the world around us. It's easy to forget that we have the ability to shift our perspective, to change the way we view not only fear but also the situations we find ourselves in. You know, fear can be a sneaky thing. It loves to make everything look more daunting than it actually is. It feeds on uncertainty, making us believe that the world is much scarier than it really is. But what if, instead of seeing fear as an obstacle, we saw it as an opportunity to shift our perspective and embrace new possibilities? One of the most powerful ways to deal with fear is to reframe it. What if, instead of thinking, "This is too much," we thought, "This is a chance to grow"? What if we stopped seeing fear as a wall and started seeing it as a bridge? A bridge that takes us from who we are now to who we can become. The more we change the way we view fear, the more we realize that it doesn't have to control us. It doesn't have to limit us. It can actually guide us toward growth, toward new opportunities, and toward a version of ourselves we never even knew existed. Think about it. When we reframe fear, we start to see things differently. We stop thinking of it as something that needs to be avoided and start thinking of it as a sign that we're on the right path. Fear shows up when we're stretching, when we're growing, and when we're stepping outside of our comfort zones. And that's exactly when we need to lean into it. Instead of running from fear, we need to walk toward it. Every time we do, we expand our boundaries and become more comfortable with uncertainty. It's like when you're learning something new, right? The first time you try something, it's awkward, uncomfortable, and sometimes even terrifying. But as you continue practicing, as you keep pushing yourself, you begin to see the progress you're making. The fear doesn't disappear, but it becomes less intimidating. It becomes part of the process, a natural step in your growth. And the more you embrace that process, the more you start to realize that fear isn't something to be afraid of, it's something to embrace. This is why shifting our perspective on fear is so important. It allows us to stop seeing challenges as threats and start seeing them as opportunities. Every fear, every obstacle, is an opportunity to grow. It's an invitation to expand our horizons, to learn something new, and to become more the person we were always meant to be. It's not always easy, though. Changing your perspective takes practice. It takes a conscious effort to stop listening to that voice of doubt and to start embracing the opportunities that fear presents. But once you start making that shift, you'll begin to see the world differently. You'll stop avoiding the things that scare you and start running toward them. Here's the thing, we're constantly evolving. And with every step we take, with every moment of fear we face, we grow. Each new experience, each new challenge, helps us discover more about ourselves and our potential. The more we embrace fear, the more we realize that there's nothing to fear but fear itself. It's an old saying, but it's true. Fear doesn't have the power to stop us. It only has the power we give it. When we start seeing fear not as a roadblock, but as a stepping stone, something incredible happens. We stop feeling stuck. We stop feeling limited. We start to feel empowered, because we know that fear is no longer in control. We are. And every time we face fear with this new perspective, we unlock a little more of our true potential. So, next time fear shows up, take a moment to reframe it. Instead of thinking, I can't do this, think, this is my chance to grow. Instead of seeing it as something to avoid, see it as an opportunity to become stronger, wiser, and more capable than before. And the more you do that, the more you'll see that fear is not something that holds you back. It's the thing that pushes you forward. It's the thing that challenges you to be the best version of yourself. There's something incredibly powerful about facing your fear and walking through it, rather than running away from it. I know, it sounds simple, almost like one of those motivational quotes that we see plastered on posters. But the truth is, it's a lesson I've had to learn over and over again. The more I've leaned into my fears, the more I've realized that fear isn't just a part of the journey. It's the very thing that makes the journey worthwhile. You see, growth isn't about avoiding discomfort. It's about embracing it, understanding it, and using it to push yourself further than you ever thought possible. Every time we move through fear, we break through a boundary we've set for ourselves. And the more boundaries we break, the more we realize how many possibilities there are on the other side. The world opens up when we stop seeing fear as something to avoid and start seeing it as an invitation to step into new experiences, new challenges, and new versions of ourselves. The fact was, this doesn't happen overnight. It's not something you wake up and instantly understand. It's a process, an ongoing one. Each time you face a fear, it gets easier. Not because the fear goes away, but because you've built the muscle to deal with it. And that's what makes the process so powerful. It's not about eradicating fear. It's about learning to walk with it, to coexist with it, and to still move forward, even when it's there. Think back to the first time you ever did something that really scared you. Maybe it was asking for something you wanted, speaking up in a group, or doing something totally new. At the time, the fear probably felt overwhelming. But once you did it, once you pushed through the discomfort, you realized that it wasn't nearly as bad as you thought. And that moment of pushing past fear is one of the most transformative things you can experience. It changes you. It teaches you that you are capable, that you can handle whatever comes your way, and that fear doesn't have to be a barrier. It can be a tool to help you grow. Now, I'm not saying that fear is something to be taken lightly. It's still very real, and it still affects us in deep ways. It still causes anxiety, worry, and hesitation. But the more we face it, the more we realize that we're capable of handling it. Fear no longer has the power to control us, because we've learned to move through it. And that's when the magic happens. That's when you start to realize that there's no challenge too big, no obstacle too hard, because you know you can handle it. You know that even if things don't go as planned, you'll be okay. But here's what I think is truly remarkable. When you move through fear, You change not only your own life, but the lives of those around you. Think about it. When you show up in the face of fear, when you take action despite the anxiety, you inspire others to do the same. You give them permission to embrace their own fears, to push through their own limits, and to step into the unknown. You become a living example that fear doesn't have to be the end. It's just a part of the process. This is why growth is such a collective experience. When we break through our own fears, we create a ripple effect. We show others what's possible when you choose to face fear instead of running from it. It's like lighting a candle in a dark room. It doesn't just light your path, it lights the path for others too. And that's the beauty of fear. It's not something that isolates us. It's something that connects us. It's a universal experience. Everyone feels it. Everyone faces it. And when we come together and acknowledge our shared fear, we create a space where everyone feels empowered to grow, to take risks, and to step into their own potential. So, if you're facing fear right now, know this: you are not alone. You're part of a community of people who are all walking through their own fears, all stepping into new versions of themselves. And every time you face your fear, every time you break through a boundary, you're making it easier for others to do the same. You're creating a world where fear no longer holds us back, but instead propels us forward. So keep walking through it. Keep showing up, even when the fear feels heavy. Keep pushing through, even when it's hard. Because every time you do, you're not just transforming yourself, you're transforming the world around you. And that's the true power of fear. It's not something that controls us. It's something that helps us grow, evolve, and connect with others in ways we never thought possible. It's funny how fear can feel like a constant companion, isn't it? It shows up at the most inconvenient times, lurking in the background, always ready to remind us of our limitations. But here's the thing: fear doesn't have to be a permanent fixture in our lives. It doesn't have to be something that defines us. The truth is, fear is a part of the journey, an inevitable part of growth, but it doesn't have to control us. It doesn't have to be the thing that holds us back from living our fullest, most authentic lives. What I've learned over time is that fear is a dance. It's a back and forth, a push and pull, where we have the power to choose how we respond. It's not about getting rid of fear completely. It's about learning how to live with it, how to coexist with it while continuing to move forward. Fear will always be there, showing up in different forms, in different situations. But it's how we choose to handle it that makes all the difference. The key is to see fear for what it really is: a natural, human response to the unknown. It's our body's way of preparing us for something important, something new. And while it's easy to let fear dictate our actions, the true power lies in our ability to recognize it, acknowledge it, and keep going anyway. The more we practice this, the less power fear has over us. And the more we embrace this process, the more we realize that fear is not something to avoid. It's something to welcome as a guide, an indicator that we're on the right path. But here's the thing: this is a lifelong journey. We don't just wake up one day and magically stop feeling fear. We don't suddenly become fearless. Instead, we learn how to navigate it. We learn how to dance with it, to move alongside it, and to still take action in spite of it. Each time we face fear and push through, we become more resilient, more adaptable, and more confident in our ability to handle whatever comes next. And that's the beautiful thing about growth. It's not linear. It's messy, it's unpredictable, and it's full of moments where fear feels overwhelming. But it's in those moments where the real magic happens. As you continue this journey, remember that fear doesn't have to be something that holds you back. It's not the enemy. It's just a part of the process, a reminder that you're on the verge of something big, something that will push you to grow in ways you never thought possible. The more you face fear, the more you build trust in yourself, in your abilities, and in your capacity to handle whatever life throws at you. The journey isn't always easy. There will be times when fear feels louder than ever, when it feels like you're standing on the edge of a cliff with no idea what's below. But even in those moments, remember this: you've already come so far. You've faced fear before, and you've made it through. Every time you take a step forward, every time you move through fear, you're getting stronger, braver, and more capable. And that's the beauty of it all. The more you lean into fear, the more you realize that it's not something to dread, but something to embrace. It's the thing that will take you to places you never thought you'd go, that will help you discover parts of yourself you never knew existed. It's the thing that pushes you to grow, to stretch beyond your limits, and to become the best version of yourself. So, as you continue your journey, remember, fear is not something that defines you. It's just a part of the process. You have the power to move through it, to keep going, and to create a life that reflects your true potential. And as you do, you'll discover something amazing. Fear isn't the barrier. It's the bridge. It's the invitation to grow, to evolve, and to become exactly who you were always meant to be. Thank you for taking this journey with me. Keep dancing with your fear, keep facing the unknown, and keep growing. The best is yet to come.